I want you to know, all of you, to know that I am very excited to be with your UU congregations on this last day of January 2021, our new year of unusual opportunity, I hope. I greatly admire your congregation's cooperative creativity in bringing about meaningful weekly services to your members and friends, both old and new. And I thank you very much for including me in this service. My experiences with the UUs have been warmly hospitable, always interesting and challenging, which is to say that I greatly appreciate who you are. When I spoke to the Green Bay UUs last January, my title was Our 2020 Vision.
It was about $3,500. Terrific. Thanks a lot.
What do we see and what will we do? I admit that 2020 vision was my attempt to be clever as I envisioned the new year as a time of hope and progress. Actually, my eyesight wasn't then and certainly isn't now anywhere near 2020. And needless to say, this also proved to be true for my expressions of hope for the year that we just left. I could never have predicted the events and the issues of this past year, and I certainly did not, but then who did? Today in early 2021, I again speak to you with genuine hope, but also with greater caution. The reality of what happened in the past year, and certainly much of what has already happened this year, has demonstrated the unpredictability of life, as we have certainly experienced. From time to time, this has always been so. Visions and planning for the future are vitally important for better lives for all, but other factors in life, often unexpected, may greatly affect that future. Human beings over all time have learned that life has many ups and downs, good times and bad. There is a familiar passage from the Hebrew Bible, the Christian Old Testament, that reminds us that this has always been so. I read now a few verses from the book of Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war, a time for peace. Perhaps you have heard Pete Seeger sing a version of these words in a great song that for me rings with both timely truth and fervent hope. For everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. A time for every purpose under heaven. Words expressing reality in life in every time, over all time. A time to be born and a time to die, and the fullness of life in between. Life with fluidity, but always uncertainty, with joys and sadness, expected and unexpected over the lifetime of every human being. There is not only a time for love, but a time for hate, it says, and a time for war, as well as a time for peace. This is the way life has been, a reality still well known to us. But I do not believe that all the verses express what should or could always be. They do represent much of what has been true for humanity over all time. The inevitability of times to hate, the times to kill, and the times for war. That was the way life was when those verses were written, and has been true over all the centuries since. But I understand the verses to be not only timeless expression of what has always been, but also a challenge to humanity to bring about a much greater future of blessing. For I do not believe that I need to accept that there must always be a time of hate, that there will always be a time to kill, that a time for war is inevitable. Yes, these words in Ecclesiastes do speak to what reality has always been. Reality still accepted as inevitable in many situations and places, now and forever. But it absolutely does not speak to what could be and what humanity longs for deep in our souls. The message in Ecclesiastes is not complete. The ending of Pete Seeger's song is different from the biblical text. His song follows all of the Ecclesiastes verses up to the end. And then he says, to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, and a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. Those are Pete's words. I would like to think that this is a time together, in the words of Pete, that we too are called to swear that it's not too late for a time of peace. But we wonder, can it ever be so? These days, we are well aware of the challenges of 2020 still with us in full force. The COVID crisis came as a long-lasting shock with unusual challenges for the entire world population all at one time. Everyone everywhere has been vulnerable. If there has been a time for us to be unified around the globe, this should have been it. But it also seems clear that humanity has a long way to go in bonding together to break down the fences that divide us in ways that threaten us all. For we know that as the serious pandemic has spread worldwide, the population and leadership within and among countries has been and continues to be greatly divided. It is a fact that our own nation, there have been many people who have not taken the present threat to human health and survival very seriously. We are well aware of those who believe and act as though they are not vulnerable. They believe in their uninformed independence and are not likely to change. At the same time, other Americans have dedicated and often endangered themselves in caring for COVID patients and providing for the basic needs of the population as the pandemic raged. Many of those individuals paid a price for their own health, with their own health and meeting the needs of their families. To them, we are very grateful. We also know that there are many people who are suffering because of the pandemic's effect on their incomes and illness and education and childcare. They are sorely challenged for reasons not of their own making. And then there are those of us who are relatively secure and who are taking the danger to themselves and to others very seriously, working to be faithful followers of the rules that the medical authorities recommend. We've accepted the wearing of masks, staying home as much as possible, cutting ourselves off from normal living. We've been isolated in our own cocoons, hoping we are safe, but often feeling restless and separated from real life. So we know there's a great division between and among us in our country, and the divide is often deep and angry. This also brings huge challenges, not only in how we deal with the pandemic, but also for the social and governmental life in a time of political tumult. The pandemic issues in the last year have become part of a serious political divide in our nation that has festered for a number of years. This morning, I am speaking to my own observations and experiences in this time of challenge. I am so eager for the time that will open up my life and yours. While I understand and follow the practices to protect myself and others from COVID, and will continue to do so as long as it is directed, what I yearn for is the time when our lives can be intertwined with others. Yes, Zooming is a partial substitution, and I'm glad we have it here today, but of course it's not the same as really being together. I strongly believe that following the rules is important these days, especially isolating ourselves as necessary for our own health and the health of others. But I also believe that many of us are struggling in isolation even more than we know. Not only are we lonely and anxious, but also sometimes angry and resentful. That is so for me. And let me give you an example. After many experiences of wearing a mask where I need to go to an appointment or to buy food, I have realized that when I'm masked, I have little empathy and almost no recognition of the connection with the people I'm avoiding by distancing. I watch my 6-foot spacing warily, and I feel quite annoyed when people get too close. And I feel very critical of those who don't seem to be as rule following as I am. Now, I'm not proud of this, I want you to know. I find, though, that I'm now afraid of people. Of course, for good reasons these days, I'm not in direct connection with others, at least in terms of physical presence. Many of us are not face to face with friends and acquaintances in these times. And physically, I have almost no interaction with the wider community. I appreciate connecting with you as we are today, but it's not the same. These days, restrictions on my life outside my residence do not permit me to come across lots of other people I do when I move around the community in my usual life. Acquaintances, casual friends, partners who are part of my volunteer life, people who live in my neighborhood and former neighborhoods, employees in stores where I shop, all part of my life in some way. I also do not often come across people in the general public, people I do not know, but whom I may notice, and sometimes we would smile and nod to each other. These are connections that matter in my daily life. They remind me that I am part of the whole, a diverse whole. But these days, I'm not seeing the wide range of people who are part of our community, and that may be so for you too. And this, I believe, is a serious factor to consider, even in our normal lives, but certainly in this time. Our connections tend to be with others who are like ourselves. My point is that in this time of semi-seclusion and worry about health risks to ourselves and to the wider public, many of us, myself included, have become isolated and much more self-focused than connected with the public and the community. And all of this that has been dominated by COVID has been accompanied by tremendous divisive national political tumult. This too has increased our stress. In this particular time, we truly hope we have moved into a new era that will bring us greater connection among us in our country. Yet we also know that our political divide will be very difficult to overcome, and racial divisions as well. These are great challenges in this new political time that require our commitment and involvement. In assessing myself in these days, I've come to know that I must find the right ways to connect with my community and my fellow citizens. Following the health rules that will conquer the virus is essential, but certainly not enough to change the prospects for our future. And although the new leadership in our country is welcomed by many of us, this change will not be enough either. A promising future depends on people like us becoming sincere citizen activists who are committed to the future and who communicate across all the lines that divide us. I have believed myself to be an involved citizen most of my life, but this is a new time with unprecedented challenges. And I'm now pushing 84 years old, and I feel it. Especially during the COVID time, I realize that I have limited my perspective as to the possibilities for me to contribute to the challenge before us. Yet I want you to know that recently I feel much more motivated to explore and to work with others to be a part of building a future beyond my lifetime. I honestly believe that contributing to that motivation has been your invitation to me to be with the UUs this morning. In preparing my presentation, I've extended my vision to the possibilities of a better future for ourselves in the years of our lifetimes, but more importantly, for those who follow us. I can't resist mentioning John's and my 2-year-old great-granddaughter named Raylan, who we are absolutely smitten with, of course, and who will soon be joined by a little brother. Of course, I cannot and will never know what their futures will be, but I care so very much. And I want to be much more purposeful than I have been in dedicating myself to their future and the future of all the little ones who come after them everywhere. This is my responsibility. This is our responsibility. This has always been so, but never more important than now. We need to get to work with those who share our vision, of course, but it is not enough. We must also look for opportunities to listen to those who do not see the issues as we do. We may reach a consensus, but we may not. But we must try to understand for their sake and ours, and for the possibilities for productive action. In the final analysis, the more we know and understand about each other, the better for us all. The challenge is huge. I admit that I often feel so antagonistic to those who frankly appall me. I need to try to better understand. Progress will take openness and effort and time. The results at any given time will be uncertain, but this is our challenge and it will matter. I believe that the UUs offer so much in their focus on the world as it could be. And we know that there are many others so motivated. What we need to do is to dedicate ourselves, joining together with others, to invest ourselves in the future. And in doing so, we must come to greater understanding of those whom we may not agree with, but who we know matter as our fellow human beings. We share the same world and its future. This is a unique time, as we know. We are overwhelmed, but also aware that it could be a time of unique opportunity. It is a moment to listen and learn and speak. It is time to join with others who share our focus on the issues of this unique time, but also to reach out to those we consider to be on the other side. This is a time of great challenge, and we must be involved. I don't know the answers, but I am motivated. I do know that the world needs us. Along with Pete Seeger, we swear that it's not too late. Today, I thank you for this invitation and your motivation. Here's to the UUs.